Princess Lilibet was standing just inside the ceremonial rope line, watching the changing of the guard like every other child that day. But then someone stepped too close. They smiled like family, spoke like they knew her, and leaned in with words no 7-year-old should ever hear. Most people thought nothing was wrong until Lilith's hand came up, palm open, thumb tucked, fingers curled. The secret signal. And in the space of a breath, one royal guard broke centuries of protocol. And what he did next stopped the entire courtyard cold. Before we show you exactly what unfolded in those terrifying minutes, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. The changing rooms at Wellington Barracks hold a particular kind of quiet before ceremonial duty. It's not silence. Boots still scrape against tile, lockers clang shut, brass buttons click into place. But there's a reverence to it, like putting on armor before battle. Except the battlefield is ceremony, and the enemy is anything that might disturb 3 centuries of unbroken tradition. Lance Corporal Leo Marchand rolled his shoulders once, feeling the familiar weight settle across his back as he pulled the scarlet tunic into place. The wool was heavy, perfectly tailored, pristine. Each morning it transformed him from a man into an institution, a living piece of British history that tourists would photograph and children would stare at in wonder. He'd been doing this for 18 months now, ever since the medical board had decided his left lung couldn't handle Afghanistan anymore. 2 collapsed airways and a medical discharge had brought him here to what some of the lads called toy soldier duty. They meant it as a joke, but Leo saw it differently. This wasn't a step down from combat. It was combat with different rules. Instead of watching for IEDs buried in market squares, he watched for threats hiding in plain sight among crowds of admirers. The transition hadn't been easy. His first month on ceremonial duty, Leo had filed 17 security reports about suspicious behavior, tourists who lingered too long, photographers who angled their cameras wrong, visitors whose credentials didn't match their accents. His commanding officer had pulled him aside after the 17th report. "Marchand," Major Harwood had said, "you're seeing enemies where there are only sightseers." But Leo's instincts had been vindicated twice. Once, when a supposed journalist camera bag contained detailed floor plans of Buckingham Palace. Another time when a lost tourist asking for directions turned out to be conducting surveillance on guard rotations. Both incidents had been quietly handled, never making the papers. But Leo's reputation within the security apparatus had shifted from paranoid ex-combat soldier to the one who sees things others miss, which was why his name had been specifically requested for today's assignment. High-profile royal appearance, multiple access clearances, the kind of event where threats didn't announce themselves with explosives and gunfire, but with forged credentials and friendly smiles. The bare skin came last, settled with practiced care atop his head. In the mirror, Lance Corporal Leo Marchand disappeared entirely, replaced by something timeless and immovable, just the way it was supposed to be. Frenchie called one of the younger guards, still buttoning his tunic. "You seen the access list for today?" Leo nodded toward his open locker. A single sheet of paper was taped to the inside. Temporary clearances for the day's ceremony at St. James's Palace. Most names he recognized: palace staff, official photographers, the usual rotation of mod liaison. But one entry made him pause. Elliot Harrow. Royal Relations. Ground-level access approved. It was the notation underneath that caught his attention. Non-actionable concern flagged via MOD Liaison South. No evidence of threat. Clearance to proceed. In Leo's experience, when intelligence officers wrote non-actionable concern, it usually meant they had a feeling something was off, but couldn't prove it. The kind of bureaucratic language that covered backs when things went sideways. He read the entry twice, then closed the locker with a metallic snap. Across the city, in a drawing room that smelled of rose water and old wood, Princess Lilibet sat perfectly still, while her governess fussed with the hem of her cream-colored coat. At 7 years old, she understood stillness in a way most children never learn. Not the fidgety restraint of forced good behavior, but the poised calm of someone born to public life. Maya, her American governess, pinned a small brooch just below Libet's collar with gentle precision. There we go, Bug. Straight as a soldier. But something was different about Lilibet today. Usually she buzzed with questions before these events, about the uniforms, the music, why the guards never smiled. Today she was quiet, thoughtful in a way that seemed older than her years. Her dark eyes kept drifting to the narrow window that overlooked the palace's service paths. "I saw Uncle Elliot earlier," she said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. Maier's hands stilled on the brooch. "Today here at the palace," Lily nodded. "He was talking to someone by the back gate before breakfast. They had papers spread out on the bonnet of a car." Maya frowned. "What kind of papers? Pictures of the palace? Of the gates?" Lilet's voice got smaller. "Of me." A chill ran down Maya's spine, but she kept her expression calm. "Honey, photographers take pictures of the palace all the time, and your uncle, well, he's family. He's allowed to be here." But even as she said it, Maya knew the complications. The bitter custody dispute when Libert's parents had divorced. The financial settlements that had left Harrow feeling cheated. The restraining order that had been quietly filed and then just as quietly lifted after pressure from certain family members who valued discretion over safety. "Maybe he just wanted to say hello," Maya continued, though her tone was less certain now. "You haven't seen him in almost 2 years. Mommy says he only visits when he needs something," Lilibet said matter-of-factly. "She says he measures everything by what it's worth to him." The words carried an adult understanding that shouldn't have existed in a 7-year-old's vocabulary. But royal children learned early that family relationships were often more complicated than love and loyalty. They were currency, leverage, opportunity. "Did he see you watching him?" Maya asked. Lilibet shook her head. "I was careful, but when they finished looking at the papers, he pointed at the window. At my window." The words hung in the perfumed air. Maya knelt down to Lily's eye level, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from the girl's sleeve. "Grown-ups can be complicated, Bug, but that doesn't mean he wants to hurt you." Libet's small hands gripped the seams of her coat. "I don't want to go out there." Maya knelt, voice soft and reassuring. "You'll have guards on every side. Big, strong guards who've trained their whole lives to keep you safe, and I'll be right behind you. Nothing's going to happen. I promise." Princess Lilibet nodded, but the gesture was mechanical. Fear still lingered behind her composure. A chime echoed down the corridor. Time to move. As they stepped into the hallway, Maya noticed something new. Lilibet wasn't looking at her shoes or tracing the ornate carpet as usual. Her gaze was sharp, scanning faces and doorways, as if she were watching for something. The forecourt of St. James's Palace breathed differently than anywhere else in London. Even with tourists pressed against barriers, even with the regimental band warming up behind ancient stone walls, the space carried a sacred weight. Sunlight poured across Georgian stone, gilding everything in gold. The crowd was typical. German tourists with expensive cameras, American families gripping guidebooks, Japanese visitors guarding prime viewing spots. They leaned forward with that peculiar mix of reverence and excitement reserved for places where history was not just remembered, but performed. In the reserved royal section, Princess Lilibet stood with her hands clasped, a pale coat glowing in the morning light. Her posture was flawless, her hair arranged with precision. To the casual eye, she was a composed young royal, attending dutifully. But Lance Corporal Leo Marchand, stationed rigidly at the south gate, saw what others didn't. Her shoulders held a fraction too high, her breathing too controlled, her gaze always sliding back toward the inner archway. There stood Elliot Harrow. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone whose clearance badge had never been questioned. Tailored jacket, polished shoes, understated elegance. The look of family respectability. Beside him stood another man, balding, unremarkable at first glance, save for the MOD liaison badge pinned backward on his lapel. A small detail, easily overlooked. But Leo had learned small details often meant survival. The man's behavior was wrong. Tourists looked around constantly, dazzled by pomp and spectacle. But this man's eyes were calculating. He studied sight lines, measured distances, cataloged personnel positions. He scrolled through his phone not for photos, but for information already stored. Maps, schedules, intelligence. And tucked discreetly in his ear was a covert earpiece. Not standard issue, not harmless. Two men with legitimate access but illegitimate behavior. Harrow caught Libert's eye and smiled. Not a warm uncle's grin, but something colder, rehearsed. He raised a hand in a friendly wave. She didn't wave back. Instead, her fingers gripped her coat tighter. Leo felt it instantly, the unmistakable signal of fear disguised as poise. Harrow stepped forward, voice pitched with perfect balance of affection and authority. "Lily, darling, come say hello, just for a moment." To most, it was casual. To Libert, it was a threat wrapped in charm. She froze, not with ceremonial discipline, but with the instinctive stillness of prey. Her eyes darted from Harrow to the man beside him, and then found Leo across the courtyard. And then she gave the signal. Her hand lifted as if brushing hair from her face, but the movement finished with deliberate precision. Palm open, thumb tucked, fingers curled. The silent distress sign taught in schools. The one that meant I am in danger. I cannot speak. Leo's breath caught. Instinct roared inside him. 3 tours in Afghanistan had carved reaction into his bones, but centuries of ceremonial tradition demanded he stand still. Guards did not break formation. Not for anything. What happened when tradition clashed with protection? The answer came like thunder. The sharp crack of boots against stone cut through the courtyard. Gasps rippled. Cameras swung. Even the band stumbled. In 362 years of ceremonial service, no Coldstream Guard had ever broken formation during active duty. Until now. Lance Corporal Leo Marchand strode forward with lethal precision, scarlet tunic blazing, rifle steady, his shadowed face making him more imposing than ever. His voice, calm but absolute, cut the silence. "Step away from the princess." He did not shout. He did not waver. He had already made peace with the consequences the moment his boots left formation. Elliot Harrow's smile cracked as Lance Corporal Leo Marchand stepped forward. His voice was smooth but edged. "Corporal, what do you think you're doing?" Leo didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the second man at Harrow's side. The man's hand slid deliberately toward his jacket. 3 swift strides brought Leo close. He seized the wrist, yanked the fabric aside, and exposed a small gray device. A signal jammer. "Illegal without clearance," Leo muttered as security rushed in. The man's jacket fell fully open. Inside was a tape diagram. Palace floor plans of private corridors where the royal family waited unseen. At the same time, Leo caught sight of Harrow's pocket. The rectangular outline beneath the fabric wasn't a phone. It was a transmitter. 1 jammer to blind communications, 1 transmitter to direct outside operatives, and a 7-year-old princess, isolated for a private chat with her supposed uncle. This wasn't chance. It was a professional extraction, planned to the minute. Chaos erupted. Boots clattered, radios buzzed, tourists pressed against barriers. Security didn't know whether to shield the child or detain the guard who had just shattered centuries of protocol. Princess Lilibet stood still in the storm, her small face calm, her chin lifted. "She's my niece," Harrow snapped. "Cleared to be here. This guard is making a scene." Leo's reply rang out like steel. "She gave the distress signal." The courtyard stilled. Even the tourists sensed the moment shift. "What signal?" Harrow barked. Lilibet stepped forward. Her voice was soft but carried. "He told me not to tell anyone, but Mommy taught me. If you feel scared and can't say why, you make the sign." She demonstrated it perfectly, palm open, thumb tucked, fingers curled. "I made it so the guard could see," she added, looking at Leo. Because he was really watching, not just looking. Recognition rippled across the detail. Harrow's mask collapsed. Within minutes, his badge was revoked. His name whispered into lists that never reached the press. The jammer and transmitter traced to a wider network. Vans, airfields, offshore accounts. It had been about money, not family. But the papers printed nothing. To the world, the ceremony carried on. Tourists snapped photos. The band played. Tradition seemed unbroken. Only within palace walls did anyone understand how close danger had come. Later, in a wood-paneled chamber, Leo faced a review board. Major Harwood's questions were measured. "You abandoned your post, intervened without command. Why?" "Because Princess Lilibet gave the signal," Leo answered quietly, "and I was the only one watching." The door opened. Lilibet herself entered, hand in her governess. She walked to Leo's side, raised her chin, and said clearly, "He saw me." He listened when I couldn't speak. Silence followed. Then the board confirmed it. Leo had been right. That evening, back in his barracks, Leo found an envelope beneath his door. Inside, a child's drawing. A guardsman standing before a small figure in a cream coat. Beneath it, careful handwriting read, "Thank you for listening." If this story moved you, hit that like button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you never miss our daily uploads. Share this with someone.